Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Okay, so we'll just wait maybe for a minute or two while people are coming, and then we'll start.
Cool.
Okay, so Nikita, Eleonora has joined us. Okay, John, can you read the names which are written in Russian?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, just in case you need that.
No problem.
Okay, so guys, I think that it's actually 8 o'clock, one past 8. So I think we'll start. Welcome everyone to our Project Bedtime story. And today with us we have an English blogger who is now living in Germany. His name is John, and he's going to tell us one of his interesting stories, and maybe he will share his blog so that you can read it later if you are interested. Okay, so John?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like Yelena said, my name's John. I'm from a city called Sheffield in the north of England, but currently I'm living in Cologne in Germany. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about travel and then a trip that I did last year. Hi. So first of all, a bit about me. So I really like traveling. So since I finished university a couple of years ago, every time I have vacation or something from work, I do a lot of traveling, mainly in Europe, but I've also been to some other places in Asia and South America too. And last year I traveled through Russia for 3 weeks along the Trans-Siberian Railway. So that's what I'm going to kind of talk about today. So I'll share my screen. So this is just so that you guys have some pictures while I'm talking, and maybe it's a little bit less boring. And a little bit of background on me and Russia. So I first came to Russia 10 years ago, 2010, when I studied in Yaroslavl for 4 months. And after that, I moved to St. Petersburg, and I lived in St. Petersburg for 5 months. And since then, I've been back to Russia 4 or 5 more times, mostly to Moscow and St. Petersburg. But I've also been down to the south to Volgograd and Elista. And one thing that I always wanted to do, kind of like a bucket list thing, was to travel along the Trans-Siberian Railway. And so last year, it looked like it was a good year to go. I took 3 weeks off work, and my trip in total was 22 days, I think, something like that. And it was one of the best trips I've ever done. It was fantastic, and I had an amazing time. But it took a lot of planning. So 22 days sounds like a long time, maybe, but it's a very long distance, and there's a lot of things to see, and a lot of time on the trains. And so there was a lot of kind of planning involved. The first thing was kind of deciding which cities I wanted to visit, because there's obviously so many amazing, interesting places. But the main thing for me was that I wanted to do a lot of hiking and be outdoors, which is something that I hadn't done in Russia before. And so that influenced my decision of where I wanted to go. And then the second part was then planning the different stages of the journey. So I don't know how much you guys might have traveled by train in Russia, but the timetables can be kind of complicated. So some of the longer journeys, the trains go only on even days, but if the month has 31 days, then the next 10 days of the next month, they switch over and then they are odd instead of even. And then between the 11th and the 14th, there's no trains, and then they change back. And all of these really complicated kind of things. One city that I visited, the train I wanted to take only ran once per week. So I had to try and make sure I was in the right city at the right time. And also on the train itself, you want to be on the train in the day, because then you can see stuff. You know, at night, obviously it's nice and relaxing and you can sleep, but then you just don't really see much of the journey. So there was a lot of planning involved. I had 3 different spreadsheets. I had notes everywhere, but I really like that sort of stuff. So that was really good. And I did manage to order all of my tickets online, which was great. And then I could choose where I was sitting to make sure that I had the best seat for the best parts of the journey and stuff, which is great. So this photo here that you can see on the screen, this is one of the stops we made on my first journey. I think the town was called Ochi or something. And it's in the Jewish autonomous oblast, really far in the east. So yeah, so there'll be some photos here as we go through. So yeah, so the first thing for the trip, I flew to Moscow, and then from Moscow I flew out to Vladivostok, and then I did the journey kind of coming back. So Vladivostok was the first place that I visited, and I really, really liked it. So it felt very different from European Russia to the places I visited. Because it's on the sea, it's on the coast, so you have kind of that sea feeling everywhere. You can smell the sea the whole time. And even though this photo looks a little bit cloudy, the weather in Vladivostok was really, really good. So it was really sunny, only like some rain. I think it rains there quite a lot. But it was really interesting. And for me, it was very different because you could tell that you were in East Asia. All of the signs there were in Russian, Korean, Chinese, and maybe sometimes in English as well. And most of the tourists and visitors there were from Korea or Japan or China. And there's a lot of kind of sushi there. The food is a little bit different. So it felt very, very like Asia. And there's lots of hills. And the places I've been to in Russia have just been kind of flat. So that was different for me too. I really liked it. It was a really nice place. And after I had my 2 days in Vladivostok, I then was on a train for 63 hours. So that is two and a half days. So I got on the train on Wednesday evening, and then I got off the train on Saturday morning. So that was from Vladivostok all the way to Ulan-Ude in Buryatia. And the train journey was really interesting. So I was in second class, where you have the 4 beds and a door. And one night there was no one else there, so I kind of had like a private room to myself for one night. The other times there was some people in the train, and I could kind of talk to them a little bit. I got to practice my Russian, which is good because my Russian is really bad, so that was useful. And yeah, and the scenery was really, really amazing. So it's just huge rivers, loads of mountains, kind of just open rolling hills. And you could kind of go for 1-2 hours and see no towns, no people, roads, just kind of nature, which was incredible. And the whole time I was thinking, like, you know, you can see hills here and these areas that probably have no names because they don't need names, no one lives there, and you know, you could never really find anything about them on a map or anything. So that was really, really interesting. So yeah, so at the end of this journey, I arrived in Ulan-Ude, where they have this very big statue of Lenin's head, and that is me. Ulan-Ude is a really interesting place. It's a small city. The architecture there feels kind of different and very Asian. So some of the new buildings have these very interesting Asian roofs where they kind of turn up at the end. A lot of Buddhist datsans, so the Buddhist temples, and a lot of prayer flags. The food there is very different. So they a lot of burza, I think it's called, which is a little bit similar to pelmeni, but made in a different style and is kind of traditional Buryat food. And they have Buryat language theatre. You can hear people speaking Buryat in the streets. And I went to a Buryat restaurant where they were playing, you know, Buryat music, and it was like this cool young guy who was like a Buryat rapper, and in this music video. So that was really interesting. And the city itself isn't so big. You can walk around it quite easily in like 2-3 hours or something. And I just had a day there, but you can see the weather was pretty good, and it was a really nice, laid-back place to be. And again, it felt really different to anywhere in European Russia because it felt so Asian. So then after Ulan-Ude, I got the train to, well, the next place I visited was Lake Baikal. So I stayed in Lisvyanka, which is the kind of the main tourist area there. And the train journey to Irkutsk went along the edge of the lake. So I made sure I was sat on the right-hand side, and you had like amazing, amazing views of the lake. It was really, really blue and just absolutely huge. But then what I didn't realize before I went was on the left-hand side, you also then have these huge mountains. And because it was late May, there was still a lot of snow on the mountains. So you had blue lake on one side, and then these dark snow mountains on the other side. So that was a really cool journey. And it was kind of short, just 8 hours, but I spent almost the entire time just on my phone trying to take pictures, you know, take some photos. This is from a hike. This is not from the trip. But that journey was really interesting. So, and in Lisvyanka, I spent 2 days there. The first day I did this hike. It's called the Great Baikal Trail, which was really interesting. And you get to go to these beaches where there's no one else there. And it was really, really beautiful. But Lisvyanka itself was kind of quiet because it was still quite cold, you know, compared to summer. And the second day I was there, it got down to 4 degrees. So the first day was like 22 degrees and the second day was 4 degrees. So that was pretty cold. And but I got to eat loads of fish, and I stayed in a really nice hostel in the woods. So yeah, that was really nice to visit too. And then after Lake Baikal, I then did some more hiking in Krasnoyarsk in the Stolby Nature Reserve. And so on my last day at Lake Baikal, it was 4 degrees. And 2 days later, I was in Krasnoyarsk and it was 28 degrees. So really, really big change in temperature. And Krasnoyarsk is a city. I think they had the Student Olympics a couple of years ago. So they invested a lot of money. The city looks really nice and new and pretty, and feels like a very exciting place. There's lots of young people. The weather was really good, so everyone was kind of out on the river. Was really nice. And then here, this view, this is probably my favorite picture that I took on my trip, because I think it shows exactly what I thought Siberia would look like, you know, just trees as far as you can see, nothing but green, and, you know, just uninterrupted woods. And so it was really, really cool to kind of get out of the city and explore. But this is actually very close to the city of Krasnoyarsk. So I just got there on the bus. And it's very, very close by. So that was a really good day of hiking as well. And then the next place I visited was Tomsk, smaller city, older city, I think one of the oldest places in Siberia. And there you have a lot of this kind of traditional architecture. So I think it's called Siberian lace, these windows and on the tops, on the roofs, which was really pretty. And in Tomsk, they have like a whole neighborhood where it's just these buildings. Some of them are in good condition, some of them are in really bad condition, but it's really beautiful and really traditional. And then you have one street of these, and then on the next street, you just have Soviet blocks, kind of which you have in a lot of big cities. So you just have a very big mix of these two things, it was really cool to see. And Tomsk, there's maybe not so much to do. It's kind of small, but I did meet some cool people. There's a lot of young students there. So it's an interesting place as well. So then after Tomsk, I got the train directly to Yekaterinburg. And so Yekaterinburg was my last stop in Asia. And Yekaterinburg I had 2 days there, or a day and a half. And that is a very, very big city. And they are building, there's a lot of skyscrapers there. It feels like a small Moscow. And I think they want to be the next Moscow. And there's a lot of, I got some fridge magnets that kind of say, stay in Yekaterinburg, Moscow can wait. So I think that they, see themselves as a real kind of important city in Russia. And here is a shot from the pond that they have in the center of the city, that I went and did some running around. And it's a very, very big city. And it's a bit like Krasnoyarsk. Things feel very new there because of the World Cup. And one of my taxi drivers really wanted to show me the stadium. So he drove me out of the way to show me the stadium that they built for the World Cup, which was fine. It's a stadium, beautiful stadium. And then after Yekaterinburg, I went to Perm. So Perm was actually my favorite city in the whole trip. I just thought it was awesome. So after all of the places in Asia, you kind of land in Perm, and Perm feels really old and really European. Like some of the streets looked like St. Petersburg to me. And you can tell that it was built in the Tsarist time, so Imperial Russia, and not in any other period. And it has a really kind of long history. And I really, really love this sign. So obviously, Perm used to be the last place that people would go to or stop in before they went over the mountains to Siberia. So for them, this has this important meaning that, happiness is here and it's not behind the mountains. You don't have to go further. You can stay in Perm. And the people there were great. I went to some really nice restaurants there. They had a really great, the top rated place on TripAdvisor. I went there and it was the best meal I had the entire trip. And I also visited the Perm 36 Gulag. They preserved it, and now it's a museum, a memorial place. And I had a guided tour there, and it was really interesting. But Perm was my last stop before Moscow. So after Perm, I got on the train and then went back to Moscow. So Moscow, I really like Moscow. It's a really cool place, but this was my 5th visit or something like that. So I didn't do too many exciting things. It was also 33 degrees or something. And because I'm English and I'm from England, I do not like hot temperatures. And that was really, really, really hot. And so the whole day, it was nice. I got a bike and I cycled along the river, which was great. But it was too hot. It was really too hot. But yeah, Moscow is, I think it's a really great place. And I've been there, I think 5 times in the last 10 years. And every time I go back, something new is changing there. Something is different. It's, changing a lot, which is really, really cool. And so what was new for me this time, you can see here on this picture, this big, catwalk bridge type thing. The park is called Zareche or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, Yelena is nodding, so something made sense there. And that's a really cool new park, if you guys know it. And I hadn't been there yet before. It was really busy, but it was very cool to have like a big green area so close to the city. So that was great, yeah. So after Moscow, I flew back to Cologne, and that was the end of my trip after 22 days. But like I said, it was kind of the best trip I've ever done. It was awesome. And the train was amazing. To just sit on the train and watch the whole of Russia go past was incredible. And I got to speak to quite a lot of people. Everyone was really, really friendly, and everyone was really helpful. You know, when you're kind of on the train and people instantly realize that you are not Russian, then people really try to help you understand where you're sitting. When you have breaks and you get off the train, people make sure that you know that you need to get back to the train. Yeah, it was a great trip. It was a really good trip. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, John. It was really interesting, and the photos were beautiful. So, guys, as usual, we have time for questions. So, if you would like to ask a question, could you write in the chat box, and we'll go from there. So.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Dimitri?
Ish. I mean, I'm fine, thank you.
Good, yeah. Fine and safe inside, right?
You've been doing kind of a circle, yeah? Back to Siberia and then back to Moscow, yeah? So it wasn't the journey towards Vladivostok, it was kind of curve.
Well, I was only in, so the first time I was in Moscow, I just was in the airport. So I flew into Moscow, and then I flew 4 hours later to Vladivostok. I came back.
Okay, so it was not from Moscow. Yeah. It's kind of a bit stereotypical to me that you have to start in Moscow and go to Vladivostok, and I can't even imagine you can do it in different way.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I read, you know, when I was doing some research and things, I think a lot of people said that it's better to do it the other way, because you, if you come from Vladivostok back to Moscow, you have fewer tourists, so the train prices are a little bit cheaper. So then you kind of finish in Moscow, which is this cool, big, amazing city. Whereas I read from some people that finishing in Vladivostok, which is a lot smaller, felt a little bit anticlimactic. But also then I think it's nice to finish close to home, because then after the end of my journey, it was just 3 hours on the plane to Cologne and then home. So that was nice.
Yeah, we've got some questions.
Yes, okay.
Cool.
So, Dima, you're first.
How did you spend your time on the train?
Okay, so on the train, I took a couple of books with me. So Agatha Christie, I really like reading Agatha Christie. So I took that with me. I drank a lot of tea. So, you know, because they have the samovar, and I got the little special mug, like from the train from Russian Railways. I had that mug with me. And yeah, and I did some writing as well for my blog. So I took a notebook, and that was kind of nice. But for a lot of the time, I was trying to talk to people. So from Perm to Moscow, I was in the bed across from me was a guy from Omsk who was kind of the same age as me. And so we spent most of the time talking with each other, which was great, kind of in a mixture of his English and my Russian. So yeah. And sleeping, obviously.
Okay, thank you. So Svetoslav has got a question.
Yes, and I have a question. Which blogger are you?
Which blogger?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my blog is called John the Go. I can send the link after the chat, and you can take a look and check it out. It's just travel mostly, but yeah, that's me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
No problem.
then Nikita, you're next.
Hello. When I first traveled to Russia, it was something strange for you?
Yeah, so well, the first time I visited Russia was when I moved to Yaroslavl, and I lived in Yaroslavl for 4 months, which is where I met Dmitry. And yeah, so then everything was weird to me. So when I arrived, my Russian was really bad, and I lived with a Haziaika, and the first word she said, I arrived there at like 2 in the morning on the bus, and the first thing she said to me was "Ustal," and I had no idea what that meant. So I just kind of nodded and smiled. And yeah, I lived there from September to December, and I just had to learn kind of everything. But yeah, but now, I mean, I've spent quite a lot of time there now. So now when I come back, you know, I fall into the kind of rhythm of being in Russia. And a couple of years ago, I took some friends from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and we did a week-long trip. We went to Moscow and we went to St. Petersburg, and that was really cool because then I could show them what Russia is like, help them with the language, and show them the people, and that was really nice to kind of share with them.
Okay, I've got another question. What was the first blog post?
My first blog post was about Gdansk in Poland. So I went there like 7 years ago, I think, and that was the first thing that I wrote about.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, then Julia has got a question. Julia?
I think that you visited a lot of cities, and which city was the most interesting for you?
So on the trip I did last year, I really thought Perm was really interesting. So I know that it has kind of not a great reputation or something, maybe for tourists, but it was really interesting. The city was really beautiful, and there's a lot of history there. And I met quite a lot of people there who, you know, took me to nice restaurants or showed me places to go and things. And I really, really liked it there. That was probably my favorite place.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Well, I've got a question, John. So how did you decide to, you know, to start a blog? How did this idea come to your mind?
Well, basically, a lot of people just kept asking me questions about traveling, and I just thought it would be easier to write something down and send them that instead of just, you know, being asked questions a lot. But it's just really nice. Like I really like traveling, and I think so I mostly travel in Eastern Europe, and I think a lot of people in England and Germany, they don't know this region so well. So normally my friends would go traveling to, you know, France or Italy or Spain. And so I think it's nice to be able to go to these places and then kind of show people how nice they are and that they can go visit and how beautiful it is. So a couple of years ago, I went to Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And I think that was somewhere that, you know, my friends had never really thought about visiting. They had no idea what that kind of looked like. And so it was nice to then write something, show them pictures and say, hey, it's a really cool place. And now they have Ryanair flights to Georgia. So now Georgia is, for people in Western Europe, Georgia is really easy to visit. So a lot of people are kind of more interested in it now.
Yeah, thank you.
John, I've got a question for you as an English person. Is there anything normal to us Russians in Russia which still looks weird to you, even as to experienced traveler?
Yeah, let me think of an example. So always the thing that the bottle can't be on the floor or has to go on the floor. This empty bottle thing, that I always find that really strange. We don't have that. And that your bag can never be on the floor. You know, like if you're sat in a restaurant and your bag is on the floor, someone comes over and tells you and says, hi, your bag is on the floor, like it's a big emergency. That I always find kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of differences. So particularly kind of in England, you know, like people in Russia are maybe more direct. So if you're not wearing the right clothes, or when I lived in Yaroslavl, if we didn't look like we were wearing enough clothes because it was cold, someone immediately came up to us and said, hey, you need a hat, you need this, which is really nice, but is very different for us, I guess.
And a lot of miners everywhere, of course.
A lot of what, sorry?
A lot of miners everywhere.
Miners?
Miners? No? It's the biggest shock for Americans. Another big shock is it's warm in houses. It's too warm in flats.
Oh, right, yeah.
Another shocking thing for all Americans. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think somebody else had a question.
Yes, Nastya has got a question. Yeah, Nastya.
Why your blogs are about traveling?
Sorry, Nadia, can you say again?
Why your blogs are about traveling?
So traveling is just kind of my favorite thing to do. And I think it's nice to kind of share about new places and new cities and things with people. And I think the more people that kind of blog about travel, the easier it is for people to travel. So when I go traveling, like when I was doing this trip, for example, I did a lot of research reading other blogs, you know? So I think it's a good way to share stories and information.
Okay, and Masha has got a question.
Do you have a pet at home, and when you travel, do you keep it with you or it stays at home?
No, I don't have a pet. So I don't have a pet because I travel too much. I would love to have a cat. So my sister lives in England and I normally visit her a couple of times a year. And she has she has 2 cats, a rabbit, a guinea pig, and a fish, I think. And I would love to have a cat, but when you travel so often, it's very difficult. So that's why I don't have one.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, so, okay, I guess those were all the questions. Do you or John have any question for the guys?
Yeah, sure. So what would be your dream travel destination?
Could you ask again, because it broke out a little bit in the middle?
Sorry, so what would be your dream travel destination? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And
yeah, so who would like to answer? I can start. So if I could go anywhere in the world, I would go to South Africa. It's my dream to visit South Africa. I have lots of friends there and they tell me that I have to go there one day. So I have to see all my friends and I would like to see it because it is supposed to be different from Russia, at least from other countries as well. So, yeah. Julia.
I would like to visit a lot of countries, but maybe first country would be Spain or Italy, because now I study Spanish and maybe one day I can speak and visit this country.
Okay, thank you. Dima?
I would like to travel around Europe by bike.
Ah, cool. Yeah, that would be awesome.
An interesting idea, thank you. Okay, anybody else?
I think I would like to go to Germany because I have a friend there. I want to meet him.
Where in Germany does he live?
Oh, not in Germany. It's Austria.
Austria. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
All right, thank you. Svetoslav?
I would like to go to Emirates because there is hot and I like place where it's hot.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay, Masha?
I would like to go to Paris because I never been in Paris and I think it's very beautiful city.
Cool.
Nastya? Thank you, Masha.
I don't know why, but I want to travel to Moscow.
Okay, Moscow is beautiful, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Back to Vladivostok. I'd love to come back to Vladivostok. It's
Yeah.
amazing city. It was full of pirates, illegal traders, all interesting people, and that's
Yeah.
why it's so interesting now, full of their descendants.
Yeah, it was a cool city. I liked it.
Okay. So, do you have any final question or final comment before we finish for today?
John, are you saving much money on traveling now?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am saving a lot of money on traveling. So, yeah, in Easter, I was meant to go to Texas to visit my friend. So he used to live here in Germany. He's Spanish, but he used to live here in Germany, and now he lives in Texas. And I was going to go and visit him, and we had everything booked. And then in 2 weeks' time, I was meant to be going to Georgia and Armenia again. I also was meant to be going to London to see some friends. So never mind. One day, soon, maybe.
Maybe.
And hopefully Yaroslav is on your list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be nice. That would be really nice. I would really like to do the Trans-Siberian again. I think it would be amazing to do it in winter, because then it would look completely different, right? It would be like a completely different journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if I do that, then it would be really great to stop in Yaroslavl and see how things have changed in the last 10 years.
Well, Svetoslav has got a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I want to ask, what do you do now when you stay at home?
So, yeah, I am still working. So I can work from home, which is good and bad because I still have to work. Yeah, I do some sports. So I run, and I'm doing some reading and just playing some computer games and stuff. Just really boring stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like all of us, I guess.
Exactly.
The same schedule for everybody.
Yeah, and just spending all of my time on on Instagram or YouTube or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we can, round up here. So thank you very much, John. It was really interesting.
Yeah, no problem. Thank
Yeah.
you for inviting me.
Great. We had a lovely discussion about traveling. So you brought some nostalgic moments to us,
Yeah.
thinking about, our travel experiences and our dreams. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who came to listen to John, and see you next Sunday. Thank you very much.
John,
Thank you very
when you mentioned London, I almost started crying.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very
One
much.
day. Thank you, guys.
Thank
It was
you.
lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.